MTP. After watching all the Republican debates, since they mentioned his name, he got an hour of response time. Anyway, joining me now for tonight's panel, Jennifer Rubin from the Washington Post, writes the Right Turn column, longtime Democratic strategist and co-founder of Purple Strategy, Steve McMahon, and Susan Page, the bureau chief here in Washington for USA Today. Welcome all.
Thank you.
Steve, let me start with you as the Democrat on this panel. It was a pretty campaigny speech. Is that good for the party or not?
Well, I think what he was doing, number one, is kind of responding to all the things that he's been hearing that aren't true for the past 12 months or so, that, frankly, you know, you need a podium like that in order to get the attention of the American people to tell them the truth.
Mm-hmm. Is that the role he should have played for this? I'm just curious.
I think it's a legitimate. I think it's a legitimate role for the president to play, particularly in the face of the fear-mongering that's going on the right and some of the things that are being said that, frankly, undermine the values that this country has always represented and stood for. The other thing I think he wanted to do was kind of create a little context around a very important decision that voters in America are about to make, which is who are going to be the standard bearers of the respective parties and who might be the next president of the United States. And I think what he wanted to do was inject some important questions into people's mindsets so that they take them into account. Look, the Republicans are going to nominate whomever the Republicans decide gives them the best chance to win or satisfies their anger or does whatever it is that the Republicans want them to do. But I think what the president was asking really is, what kind of a nation do we want to be? What kind of perception do we want to project? And you know, who do we want to do that on behalf of both parties?
You know, Jennifer, what struck me about the reaction to the speech is really that more and more it is clear the two parties live in two different, they live in two different realities. And I know what you may say about the speech, and I know it's not talking points from either of you. I really think that there is just two worldviews going on here.
Well, the Republicans certainly think on foreign affairs the president lives in a different reality than the world. There was something very bizarre about this incident going on with the Iranians picking up our boat. And you have 250,000 people dead in Syria, and you have Russia in Ukraine and in Syria. And then you have the president kind of saying, everything's fine, everything's good. No one can say that America isn't more respected. I don't think that's what Hillary Clinton wants to run on. Americans don't believe that, and I don't think it's true. So at least in the foreign policy realm, I think the difficulty is what he believes is certainly not what the American people believe. If you look at his role in foreign policy, on terrorism, it's way, way down. So I think that creates a tension and a problem on their side. I think on the other things, on what you were speaking about in terms of Trump's language and so on, I think he is appealing to those swing voters, Democrats, perhaps liberal Republicans, people who, for example, wanted Jeb Bush to win. And I think it's a smart tactic for them because not everyone is a Trump fan. You know,
Susan, it's funny when she brings up on the foreign policy front, the president really does believe that the American public is over, I don't want to say over concerned or getting spun up more than they should be. And that is why I thought that part of his speech was the most defensive part of the speech, but that was the motivation behind it.
Because it's so annoying to him or frustrating or enraging. When he hears
he gets more angry about that than anything else.
Attention to him. It's not following his
But also, it's different from when we had a Cold War, where it really was an existential threat, right? We could have had a Cold War, we could have had an atomic attack, and you know, really very serious consequences. Terrorism is terrifying, but it does not threaten the existence of the United States.
That's what he said. He made that long existential threat.
It is a hard argument to make.
In the case of Iran, for example, if Iran gets a bomb, Americans think it's an existential threat if North Korea gets the bomb, if Iran gets the bomb, if terrorists get nuclear materials or chemical weapons, for example. So I think it's terribly off-key. Whether he believes it or not, I think he should go in a room and shout it to the walls. But when he says it to the American people, he's saying, you're all nuts, you're all hysterical. And that does not go down well.
But the suggestion or the implication on the part of Republicans that we're just going to bomb Iran is not based in reality. George W. Bush was...
There's not a single Republican in the presidential primary.
Listen to what Marco Rubio said just today.
Not a single one of them are taking that position.
There's a saber rattling on the Republican side that frankly is troubling, and it doesn't carry over into the White House. You know, what happens is to all these guys, and this happened to the president on Guantanamo, is once you get there and once you're president, you understand that things are a lot more complicated. And I think, you know, the president's being honest, a bunch of terrorists running around in pickup trucks are not existential threats.
People in Paris don't think that.
Susan, I want to get to existential threats. Before we go to break and before we move to the bromance that's gone for naught now between Trump and Cruz, I want to get a little bit more of your sit-down with Paul Ryan, because he was amazingly critical of the president, probably more so than I expected. Take a listen.
I think he glossed over the economy I think he glossed over our foreign policy failures. I think that's basically the kind of speech he gives these days, and I think it really is divorced from reality.
So there really is two worldviews.
Divorce from reality. We're talking about also the economy. The president argues the economy is doing pretty well. A lot of Americans don't feel that way in their own lives. He also said something I thought was remarkably critical of the president. He said that the political tone of the State of the Union address degrades the presidency. That's not the traditional way presidents have handled
the address
State
was
of
too
the Union.
political.
It was too political. Presidents can be political. Traditionally, the State of the Union address isn't one of the places where a president injects himself into the debate that's going on about his successor, about the campaign to follow. Now, different times now, more partisan, but the Speaker Ryan was quite critical of him for that.
That's very interesting. All right, we'll take a pause here and go back to Cruz and Trump in a minute. You guys are sticking around.